Hello, guys. I am Shane Davis, 20-year comic book veteran, 20 plus, actually. And we're going to talk about Batman #1 selling 500,000 copies. Now, this was Matt Fraction and George Jimenez, or Jimenez, I think Jimenez, which, okay, so I have a couple of takes on this, and nobody's going to be happy with me on this because a lot of people are screaming that Batman #1 sold only because of speculator boom, 500,000 copies, right? These type of numbers on a single issue, I don't think I've seen since like Civil War or something. These are huge numbers, especially for this climate we're in. We're talking about diamond bankruptcy. We're talking about manga is killing us. All of these things, readership's down. Everybody's having to reboot everything. All of this stuff, we need absolute Batman. And this brings into question, why did this sell 500,000 copies and absolute Batman did not? Do we need reboots? Well, the reality is this book, blind bag. It was a blind bag item. Now, for people who know what blind bag is, it's basically like capsule toys. We see this with like little kid toys now. It's actually become more and more common. And if you're a parent, you probably understand what a blind item is, meaning like there could be a toy, 8 different toys actually in a capsule, and you're going to get one of them. And if you buy 2, you run the risk of getting duplicates. It's really hard to get a complete set because you can't actually see what you're buying. But they make up for that by making a chase figure in the capsule. Now, that chase figure, sometimes it's just a repaint. Oftentimes, it's just a repaint. Sometimes it's actually the figure itself. And those fetch crazy amounts of money on the aftermarket. I mean, and I actually like blind item toys. I'm a big fan of it, even if it's not for me, if it's for like my daughter, or if it's for Yanzi. I have the winning touch. I will go through the box and I will pick the one that just feels right. And oftentimes I end up picking the variant, the one that's sought after or hard to get item. And so I'm very well aware that this is a common collector practice now. Now, what's not common is this to be done in the American comic book industry. Now, some people are going to argue that, well, Shane, when you buy those 3 comics, those bundles, you never know what's in the middle of those 3 comic bundles that you see shrink wrap oftentimes at like Ollie's or Big Lots or something like that. And that is true. That kind of is that gimmick, except usually that's garbage in the middle. It doesn't really matter what the blind comic is. Now, in this case, the 500 copies, there was a 1 in 1,000 variant. Now, this is where it becomes like, is this predatory or not? Okay. Now, predatory publishing practices could arguably be part of the decline of the American comic book industry right now. Diamond was owed like something like $33 million or something like that. A lot of debt from comic shops that couldn't pay. Why? Because comic shops were ordering and ordering and ordering to qualify for these crazy variant covers, right? Like a Jim Lee sketch cover, if they 1 in 100, 1 in 1,000, all of these things, meaning if you ordered 1,000 copies of, say, New 52, maybe you would get this black and white wraparound cover that you get one of. And now these things are usually done to cause retailers to round up the numbers, meaning like, let's say if they were ordering 800 copies, maybe they want to order 200 more, even though they can't sell them. But they can always store them and sell them later down the road. But order that 200 more and you'll get this one comic that you can sell for $1,000. And this is something I think really in the American comic book industry it ran away. Nobody checked it. Nobody said you're actually eating these retailers alive. They're going in debt and all of these things, because then eventually it wasn't even about ordering a certain amount. Marvel, especially Marvel, would say, hey, this random issue of Deadpool or this random issue of Guardians of the Galaxy for Secret Wars, we need you to meet or exceed those orders times 5 of your shop. And then you qualify to unlock this variant cover, this Secret Wars variant cover. And it's like, well, what did Guardians of the Galaxy this for something in the middle times this have to do with? It was like becoming like a math problem. And it was very confusing to retailers and caused a big influx of comics that nobody was ever going to read. These things were going to end up in a landfill just to unlock that one variant cover, because basically a retailer could lose money to make it up on that one cover. Now, in the case of these variant covers, there was no guarantee. Like if you ordered 1,000 copies that you would get the 1 in 1,000. You would hope so. But the reality is because they were wrapped in a bag, nobody really knows where the gold one is. You'd have to open up the bag to understand that. And some of these covers were selling for anywhere between 1,300 to 1,000. Now, what that means is maybe you just ordered 5 of these books and you opened it up and you were just that fortunate and you won the lottery ticket. It's kind of crazy. And a lot of these variants were simply this. That's what they were. They were just foil gold, monochromatic. And this is often the case with a lot of variants. Sometimes the figure is just colored gold. That is a lot of the cases with blind bag toys, capsule toys type thing. So is this predatory or not? That's kind of a big question here, but I'm going to take it up another notch. I'm going to say, is this fun? Is this fun for comic readers? Now, ideally, yes. But the reality is the person purchasing these books first are actually comic shops. And again, that's kind of where we got up underwater, is this type of practice. Now, if you're a comic fan and you want to go into your comic shop and you want to buy, I don't know, 5 of these bags and open them up just for fun, because that's part of the fun of a blind toy, right? Is you pick up maybe 2, 3, because you don't want repeats. If there's a series of, say, 8 figures, anything over 5, you're going to get a repeat. And you pick them up and you open them up. And if you want to get a full set, you usually end up going to eBay. That's what I do anyways. But in this case right here, I'm kind of wondering how many of these books, given these numbers, actually were opened up by fans. I'm afraid most of these comics were actually opened up by retailers, and that's where this becomes predatory once again. Now, for people who don't know, the retailer is actually the guy that's ordering the book, not the fan. The fan is the demand for the book, right? The retailer is the guy that's actually putting the money down for the books and receiving the books and getting them in his hand first before the store even opens. So my theory is, I don't know how many people actually got the bags. I don't know how many of these out of the 500,000 that sold really were just opened up for retailers. 500,000 copies, 500,000. This is one of DC's biggest, probably #1 selling books all year. And I don't think Matt Fraction did it. Obviously, nobody's contesting that. Everybody knows it's 500,000. But let's talk about the books that DC Comics has put out this previous year that did not do these numbers or didn't have this big a push. Things like, I would say, Absolute Batman. Hush 2 should have been hitting these numbers just on the demand of people wanting Jim Lee and Jeff Loeb to come back and do a sequel. I've said before, I think they should have just done Superman, but, nobody listens to me. The real problem I think we're all facing now, and people aren't talking about it yet, is the comic industry has a history of just doing what they see works, and they never really think it through. So this was a gimmick that, they just tried. A lot of these books, as sad as it is, are never going to be read. But that doesn't mean it wasn't fun for some people. And it doesn't mean that Marvel isn't going to try the blind bag thing, because DC just figured it out. Here's 500,000 copies. I'm sure DC will do this again. And I'm afraid this could really hurt a lot of retailers in the end. But that's not that it hasn't happened before. I mean, it's kind of weird in a way. I just don't feel like half the orders ever really were opened up by the fans. I would say, I know this sounds crazy, but I wouldn't be surprised if something like 200,000 copies here were actually opened up by just comic shops, or they're continuously opening them up now. That's my feel. This has always been the case. Even if you go back to the trading card game, right? You'd see card shops sitting around in the back just opening up packs of cards so they could flip the cards individually, right? This isn't new, okay? It's in the collector's zeitgeist, right? Like, collectors are attracted to opening up something to find out what they got. The trick is for the American comic book industry, and especially the American comic book industry, is we're constantly talking about getting our asses kicked by manga. We're living in the world where a new IP like Demon Slayer just kicked Fantastic Four's ass in the theaters. We need readership, and this is the opposite of readership. It's a correct move, because I actually like the idea of opening blind toys up, or cards or something like that up, and finding out what I got. But this goes completely against readership. And my fear of this is what Marvel and DC did in the 90s with the die-cut comic covers and the gimmick covers back then. Now, some things were decent reads, like something like Fatal Attraction and things like that. But then there's other sides of it where they were just doing these gimmick covers, cardstock, die-cut, whatever, hologram. And it would just be random issues of Spider-Man. So there's a correct way to do this. I would say in this case, I'd say DC Comics did it about as well as you can. It's a single one and done Batman issue from my understanding. Each one of these issues are going to be standalone issues. So, I mean, any casual new fan that opened up these books, it was a good entry point, arguably, to read a Batman book. I just don't trust the people that work in comics right now to understand the opportunity of this blind bag, that this could be a great thing, or it could really bankrupt an already bankrupt retailer system. We're talking about tons of retailers that have defaulted on money they owe to Diamond, all of that stuff. The retailers do not have the discipline to only order what they can sell. That is why they fall victim to predatory publishing practices constantly. This is just another way to do it. And this could attract people to come back and speculators to buy, especially when they hear somebody, cracked open a bag and there's a $1,300 comic, Jim Lee comic. Sure, that word can get out there and maybe bring some type of collector back into the market. But I feel like that's not the problem with the American comic book industry, is the collector's market, because I think like it's held together by the collector's market in a weird way. Even though it's being torn down constantly by renumbering, I think the variant cover guys, the guys that go out there and spend the hundreds of dollars for the art term cover and all of that, that they're there. That's not the problem. Readers are the problem. And I just don't know if this gimmick, I could just see Marvel doing 3 of these next month. I wouldn't be surprised if the next Batman Deadpool crossover issue that's getting ready to come out in November, if somehow they don't do a blind bag gimmick for it. There's no way that this isn't going to happen at least 5 times a year from here on out. And I don't know, guys, you let me know in the comment. Do you think this is something that can bring speculators in? How could this possibly help readership? We've seen this before in the past. You can look at like X-Force as a good example, where there were trading cards bagged in the comic. So you had to buy X amount of the comic to get the full set of trading cards. And that's the closest thing I can think of to this in my lifetime that was in comics. I don't know. I have mixed feelings again. My stance on this is I actually like the idea of it. I just don't trust Marvel and DC with this idea. If you guys will, look down below, hit like, subscribe, ring the bell for notification. Also, if you guys haven't, we're going to be pulling this down next month. This is Anatomic. Welcome to the arena. Book 1. Go over here, check it out. If we hit $140,000, every backer is going to get a free mini comic with their purchase of the book. The mini comic will be 16 pages, origin story of Anatomic. So you get another free comic just by supporting this. If we can hit $140,000, I'll leave you guys with a trailer for this smash hit comic and catch you guys again with another video.
If fighting was a god, I would worship him. I would bow to him. I would pray for victory. For he only grants opportunities. But behind every god lurks a devil. And the devil wants me to take a dive. My name is Anatomic. And this is how my legend was made.